The world of personal computing has always been dominated by Windows. For decades, Windows has been the default choice for millions, ingrained into offices, schools, and homes alike. People have grown accustomed to the familiar interface, the seemingly endless catalog of software, and the ecosystem that revolves around Microsoft's operating system, yet there has always been a silent contender lurking in the background, patiently evolving, quietly improving, and waiting for its moment. That contender is Linux. Linux has long been the choice of developers, tech enthusiasts, and professionals who value stability, security, and control over their computing experience. For years, however, mainstream users have viewed Linux as intimidating, incomplete, or incompatible with the tools they rely on daily. That perception, however, is rapidly changing, and a new feature has just emerged that could alter the landscape of personal computing entirely. The feature I'm talking about is not just an incremental update or a minor tweak to the interface. It's a fundamental shift in how Linux interacts with software and hardware, bridging gaps that once made Windows seem indispensable. To understand why this is revolutionary, it helps to consider what has kept Windows at the top for so long. Windows thrives because it has universal compatibility. Almost every major software application, from Microsoft Office to Adobe Creative Suite, was first designed for Windows. Gaming has historically favored Windows due to DirectX and optimized drivers. The convenience of plug-and-play drivers, seamless hardware recognition, and broad commercial support has kept even the most curious users tethered to Windows. Linux, by contrast, while powerful, has often required users to think differently, adapt software via alternatives, or even wrestle with compatibility layers like Wine to run Windows applications. That barrier alone has kept the average user from fully embracing Linux. But this is changing now. The new feature I'm referring to essentially eliminates the last major dependency on Windows for the everyday user. It's an advancement that enables Linux to run almost any Windows application natively, with performance and stability that rival and in some cases exceed running the same programs on Windows itself. It's not emulation, it's not a hacky workaround, and it's not a beta experiment. This is polished, integrated functionality that Linux distributions are rolling out right now, and it has been designed to be accessible to both seasoned Linux users and complete newcomers alike. Imagine a world where the average user can boot into Linux on their laptop or desktop and open all the software they've grown up using without a single hiccup. Office productivity tools, creative software, even niche programs that were historically Windows only, all running smoothly without complex setups or troubleshooting guides. This changes everything because it addresses one of the last psychological barriers to switching from Windows. The fear of losing access to familiar software has been the biggest reason users have resisted migrating to Linux. That fear is now effectively gone. But the implications go even further than just software compatibility. This feature also brings a level of integration that makes Linux feel more modern, more unified, and more user-friendly than ever before. It leverages advancements in containerization and virtual environments to encapsulate Windows applications in a way that keeps them secure, isolated, and fully integrated with the Linux desktop. Users don't feel like they are running a separate system within Linux. The experience is seamless. Launching a Windows application now feels no different than opening a native Linux program. Icons appear in your application menu. Windows behave like any other Linux window, and everything from clipboard sharing to file access works naturally. It's a polished experience that feels deliberate, designed, and complete. Performance is another area where this feature shines. Historically, attempts to run Windows software on Linux through compatibility layers or virtual machines came with a performance hit. Programs were slower, graphics were sometimes glitchy, and resource usage could be punishing. With this new feature, the overhead is minimal. It's leveraging the latest in kernel-level improvements, GPU drivers, and system optimization techniques to make sure applications run at near-native speeds. Gaming, which has always been a sticking point for Linux, is seeing remarkable improvements as well. Games that once required dual booting into Windows now run directly on Linux, with impressive frame rates and stability. For gamers, this is nothing short of a revelation, because it finally makes Linux a serious, viable gaming platform without compromise. What's even more exciting is that this feature is being integrated across major Linux distributions. Whether you're using Ubuntu, Fedora, Arch, or one of the newer polished distributions, the experience is being unified. That's important because Linux's fragmentation has historically been a hurdle for mainstream adoption. Different distros, different package managers, and different desktop environments created a perception that Linux was too complex for average users. But with this feature, the gap between distributions is shrinking in terms of functionality. Users can focus less on the technical nitty-gritty and more on actually getting work done. It's a pivotal moment that finally aligns Linux with mainstream expectations of ease of use, without compromising the freedom and control that makes it appealing to enthusiasts. Security and privacy are additional factors that make this development so powerful. Windows has often been criticized for security vulnerabilities, telemetry, and privacy concerns. With Linux, users have always had the ability to take back control over their systems, but the trade-off was always convenience. With the new feature, users no longer need to choose between compatibility and security. They can enjoy the software ecosystem they're accustomed to while benefiting from Linux's strong security model, faster patch cycles, and superior system transparency. This is a combination that simply wasn't possible at scale until now. The notion that switching to Linux might require compromises in software availability or system functionality is becoming obsolete. Users are finally free to enjoy both worlds. It's also worth noting how this development changes the economics of computing. Windows licensing has always been a cost factor for consumers, educational institutions, and businesses. Even small businesses that needed multiple Windows licenses faced significant expenses. And updates or upgrades often came with additional costs. Linux, being open source and free, has always been attractive in theory, but practical limitations often prevented it from being a full replacement. Now, with this new feature, Linux offers a completely viable alternative without sacrificing functionality. Organizations can reduce costs dramatically while also improving security and flexibility. This isn't just a theoretical advantage. It's a real-world incentive for businesses to consider migrating entire workstations to Linux. Beyond business and personal productivity, this feature also has massive implications for creativity. Linux has long been home to powerful creative tools, from video editing software to graphic design programs, but there have always been gaps. Industry-standard tools like Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, or Premiere Pro were traditionally unavailable or only partially functional through workarounds. That barrier has now been dismantled. Artists, designers, and content creators can work on Linux without compromise, accessing the same professional software they would on Windows, with the added benefits of system stability, performance, and customization. This alone could shift entire creative communities toward Linux over time. The ecosystem effect is also worth discussing. As more users adopt Linux and more developers begin to see the viability of Linux as a primary platform, the incentive to create Linux-native applications grows. This feature acts as a bridge, but it also encourages innovation. Developers can now target Linux without worrying about alienating users who still need Windows compatibility. Over time, this could accelerate the growth of Linux-native software, making the platform even more robust, versatile, and appealing. The network effect could finally reach a tipping point where Linux is no longer seen as niche, but as mainstream, capable, and modern. There's also an element of user empowerment that comes into play. Linux has always been about giving users control, from choosing your desktop environment to managing updates, from configuring system behaviors to selecting applications. Linux empowers users in ways Windows cannot. By removing the dependency on Windows, this feature extends that empowerment further. Users can choose Linux for security, stability, and privacy without being forced to sacrifice software availability or convenience. That's a fundamental shift in the balance of power in personal computing. Looking at the broader technological context, this development also aligns with trends in cloud computing, remote work, and platform agnosticism. More workflows are moving online, and the importance of being tied to a specific operating system is diminishing. But until now, local software compatibility remained a barrier for Linux adoption. By eliminating that barrier, Linux becomes a truly universal platform, capable of serving as a primary operating system across devices, industries, and workflows. This is particularly relevant for students, freelancers, and professionals who need a reliable, flexible system without the overhead of maintaining Windows licenses, updates, or potential bloatware. Of course, adoption won't happen overnight. People are creatures of habit, and Windows has decades of entrenchment. Corporate environments, educational systems, and average users all have inertia that slows change. But technology has a way of moving quickly once key barriers are removed. This feature doesn't just make Linux competitive, it makes Linux compelling. It creates a narrative where Linux is not just an alternative, but a superior choice for many users. It's easy to imagine a world in 5 years where personal computing decisions no longer revolve around Windows versus Linux, because the choice becomes obvious. Linux offers performance, security, compatibility, and cost benefits in one integrated package. It's also a wake-up call for Microsoft. Windows has dominated for so long that complacency has been an issue. Features like this on Linux force a re-evaluation of what makes an operating system valuable in today's context. Convenience alone is no longer enough to maintain loyalty. Users are increasingly aware of privacy, performance, and cost. They are willing to explore alternatives when the experience meets or exceeds expectations. This feature is not just a technical achievement, it's a cultural milestone that signals a shift in computing priorities. To sum up, this isn't just another update, another patch, or another Linux tweak. This is a game changer, the kind of development that makes people reconsider everything they thought they knew about computing. Linux, once considered niche and incompatible, now presents a complete, fully functional environment where Windows is no longer required. It empowers users, reduces costs, enhances security, and opens doors to creativity and productivity previously tied to Windows. The implications for personal users, businesses, and developers are profound. We are witnessing the beginning of a new era in computing, one where freedom, performance, and compatibility coexist in a way that Windows alone can no longer claim. For anyone who has been waiting for the right moment to make the switch, the moment has arrived. Linux has evolved beyond being just an alternative. It has become a platform capable of redefining what personal computing can be. And this feature, it's the key that unlocks it all.